Welcome to the top places to see in Iceland videos. It's a series of videos. We will talk about what can you do in Iceland in about 3 to 4 days if you have a stopover there, or if you plan to visit parts of the Iceland island. We'll give you some pointers on what to do in the airport, what are the top things to do, a quick description of Reykjavik, and then also, fairly importantly, where to stay, where to eat, where to buy food, things like that. So let me start with the beginning. So Iceland is in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, in between North America and Europe. Reykjavik, the capital, is the northmost capital in the world. So Stockholm is a bit south if you go by latitude. Also is in between the North American plate and the European plate. They are going apart, so our plate is crushing into, our North American plate is crushing into Asia, as you might know. So it's slowly departing, and that is creating quite a bit of volcanic activity, geysers, and other indications of tectonic work. Now, let me come back to Iceland. So let me bring that map back. And with that, let me give you a feel for how big Iceland is and also the population. So in terms of how big it is, it's about the size of Kentucky, or slightly smaller than Ohio, if you can visualize that on the US map. However, the population is about 1/30 of Ohio. So Ohio has about 10 million people. In Iceland, for good reasons, you have a much smaller population. So you see all the ice caps here, all the glaciers in the center of the country. There is not too much. Majority of the people live in Reykjavik. 2/3 of the population live in Reykjavik, and they do speak Icelandic, the Viking language, but they also speak English. In terms of money, Icelandic krona, so they're not in the European Union system, but they have their own currency, and the currency is the Icelandic krona. Rule of thumb, 100 Icelandic kronas to $1. Maybe it's a bit more, but that's the rate that I used, and it makes it much easier to convert whatever prices you see there. The electricity is the European type electricity, 220 volts. You do not need a transformer to charge your laptop or your iPhone, but you do need a two-prong European plug, so slightly different than what you see in US. In terms of time zone, they are 5 hours ahead of Eastern time, or the New York time, and 8 hours ahead of Los Angeles. What I mean by ahead, if it's 8 o'clock in the morning in New York City, then will be 1 p.m. in the afternoon. So 8 plus 5, 1 p.m. in the afternoon. So that's what I mean by 5 hours ahead. And with that, let's talk about your flight there, and then when you arrive, what are the absolutely must-do things to do. You will spend, with the discounters flying into Reykjavik, this is an example, WOW Air, you will spend about 5 hours from the East Coast, slightly more from the West Coast. All the discounters use fairly new airplanes. So with WOW Air, they use Airbus 320. There are 3 seats and 3 seats on each side. You see a pretty narrow aisle. I would compare this to Ryanair if you are familiar with the European discounter. You will not get any coffee, water, food, anything unless you are willing to pay. Be prepared to pay about $3 to $3.50 for a small bottle of water, $4 for a coffee, $9 for a beer, about $10 for a sandwich. So this is the level of pricing. They do have a duty-free and I am going to give you a couple of things to remember when you arrive on the Keflavik airport. First and foremost, you are going to arrive into Keflavik. So to give you a feel for where Keflavik is, right here on a lava rock. You'll feel that you are landing on Moon, but you are landing on the Keflavik International Airport. Do not confuse that with the Reykjavik domestic airport. So the Reykjavik domestic airport is somewhere here. It's a bit of a drive, maybe 50 kilometers from Keflavik to Reykjavik. Important things, when you arrive in Keflavik, I'm talking here about Keflavik. So first thing that you will do before going into customs, to clear customs, before going to passport control, make sure that you go into the duty free. This is a bit unusual, but as you get off the airplane, just follow the Icelanders. They will all crowd into the duty free. You can buy here at reasonable prices. In Iceland, think about Iceland about 2 to 3 times the North American prices on pretty much everything: food, clothing, diary, and anything, books, anything that you want to buy in Iceland is going to be about 2 to 3 times more expensive. About $7.5 per gallon. Right now the gallon is in Ohio is about $2.30 to $2.40. So that's 3 times. The same will be true for pretty much everything. And keep in mind, they do have a 25% VAT. Everything needs to be transported, shipped there. So there is a good explanation. And then their retail is right now undergoing some transformation with the arrival of Costco into Iceland, but otherwise these are pretty tame retailers. They don't have a lot of pressure on prices, so nowhere close to North American retail. This is another view of the airport waiting area. Fairly modern, so they modernized the airport. I remember I flew into Keflavik 10, 12 years ago and was a much smaller airport. Now it's a much bigger airport. They even have some entertainment if you want to take pictures. That's one of their hidden people statues that you can take a picture in the airport. This is, I think, a waiting area. And again, this is where the Keflavik airport is. Now, let me talk for a second about rental cars. Expect to pay for the rental cars about $100 per day. Before going there, let me show you one more thing. So these are blueberries. They're not that big, and you see here the price $15 for one. This gives you a feel for the fresh food in Iceland and in the Keflavik airport. In terms of the rental car, unless you want to use these horses, obviously that's a joke. I suggest you get a rental car. They do have some public transportation. It's going to cost you from Keflavik to Reykjavik about $12. And then inside Reykjavik, the buses are about $3 a ride. The cars are about $100 per day. So that's your pricing, your target pricing. New cars, decent cars, make sure that if you go there in the winter, you do have winter tires, snow tires. Similar to Germany, similar to Nordic countries, it will be even illegal to go without that. And here what you see, this beautiful view and this beautiful road has about 1 inch of ice on it. And remember that the Icelanders are driving 100, 120 kilometers per hour, so 65 to 80 miles per hour on this 1 inch sheet of ice. And just pay attention on how you drive here. Make sure that you get a good car. We had a larger car first time we went there. I think it was a Kia 7-seater, and that was more $140 per day. But I would highly recommend that you book your car well in advance, and that will give you a better price and also availability. Remember, June to August is a very busy period in Iceland, and you need to book your car, your lodging well in advance. With that, in my next video, I will talk about Blue Lagoon. So what you do once you arrive, Blue Lagoon is very close to the Keflavik airport, and even before going to Reykjavik, that might be a good morning activity. And then I'll talk about Keflavik, and I'll even give you some pointers on Costco and retailers, and we'll talk about some popular tours in Iceland.